The red forests of Alaris Prime whispered like ghosts when the wind passed through their tall, glassy trees. The air shimmered faintly with dust, and the sunlight fell in broken beams through the leaves. In this strange alien world where humans were almost forgotten, there lived an old man named Jonas Hale. He was the last of his kind in that wilderness. A lonely human, gray-bearded and scarred by time, living in a wooden cabin he built with his own hands. The locals, the blue-skinned Valari, called him the Forest Ghost. He didn't mind. Ghosts didn't owe anyone explanations. Every morning, Jonas woke before dawn. He moved through the fog like part of the earth itself, silent, patient, careful. He checked his traps, the simple wire snares and pressure hooks he'd built to catch small prey. It was how he survived. He no longer cared for riches or glory. He only cared for the quiet rhythm of life. As he walked through the forest that morning, his boots crunched over frost. He carried his old rifle slung across his back. It wasn't much, but it had saved him more than once from beasts with too many teeth and bandits with too little mercy. The rifle had a name scratched on its side, Mira, the name of his wife. The last human he ever loved. The forest smelled of iron and rain. Jonas's breath fogged the air as he came upon his first trap. It was empty. The next two were untouched as well. He sighed softly. Maybe they're learning, he muttered to himself. Or maybe I'm just getting slow. He reached his last snare, a simple rope loop hidden beneath the roots of a crimson fern. But as he drew near, he froze. The trap had been sprung. The rope was pulled tight. Something or someone was caught. Jonas's heart quickened. He gripped his rifle and moved closer, expecting the usual. Perhaps a feathered crawler or a small horned beast. But when he parted the ferns, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a creature. It was a person. A young girl lay tangled in the trap, her silver blue skin glimmering in the dim light. She was wearing what looked like a torn royal robe, its edges embroidered with golden threads. Her wrists were bruised from struggling, and her hair, thin, white, and luminous, was matted with dirt and leaves. For a moment, Jonas simply stared. He hadn't seen anyone so young in years. "By the stars?" he whispered, lowering his rifle. "What fool wanders out here dressed like that?" The girl's eyes fluttered open. They were golden, deep and glowing like two suns. She tried to speak but coughed instead. Her voice was faint, trembling. "Please, help me." Jonas's instincts flared. The forest was dangerous. Beasts hunted here at night, and the cold would kill her before dawn. Without thinking, he knelt and loosened the trap, his rough hands moving with surprising gentleness. "Easy now," he murmured. "You're safe. I got you." When she was free, he lifted her carefully. She was lighter than she looked, fragile as a bird. Her pulse was weak. He could feel her trembling against his chest. As he carried her back to his cabin, he couldn't help but wonder who she was. Her clothing, her jewelry, everything about her screamed nobility. No common Valari would dare wear such things, especially in the wild. Inside his cabin, Jonas laid her on his cot near the fire. He poured warm water from a tin pot and cleaned her wounds with care. She winced but didn't resist. Her eyes flickered open again, studying his weathered face. "You... human?" she whispered softly, her voice fragile but curious. Jonas gave a tired smile. "Last I checked, yeah." She seemed amazed, as if seeing a human was something rare and impossible. "I thought your kind were gone," she said weakly. Jonas shrugged. "Mostly are, but I'm too stubborn to die, I guess." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. Then her eyes closed and she slipped into unconsciousness again. Jonas sat back, rubbing his beard. He looked at her delicate hands, her royal robe, the strange symbol etched in gold on her collar. Something about it stirred an old memory, a symbol he'd seen on the banners of the Valari Empire long ago, when humans still fought in their wars. He frowned. "What in the hell are you doing out here, girl?" Outside, the red leaves rustled as night approached. The forest whispered secrets, but none Jonas could yet understand. He sat beside the fire, staring at the girl, wondering what trouble had just walked into his lonely world. For years he had lived unseen, untouched by the chaos beyond the trees. But now fate had set a trap of its own, and the old hunter had caught more than he ever imagined. He didn't know it yet. But the girl lying on his bed was no ordinary traveler. She was Serenia, the Emperor's daughter, heir to the most powerful throne in the galaxy. And by saving her life, The last human on Alaris Prime had just changed the fate of 1,000 worlds. The fire crackled in the cabin as Jonas sat in silence. The young girl slept, her chest rising and falling in a fragile rhythm. He watched her, his eyes tracing the delicate lines of her face, the faint shimmer of her silver-blue skin. For years he had not shared his life with anyone. Now here was someone he felt he had to protect, though he didn't yet understand why. Jonas moved quietly to a small shelf, pulling out a clean cloth and some water. He washed the blood from her arms and hands, careful not to wake her. She was so young, so different from the humans he remembered, yet there was a bravery in her, even in sleep, a strength he could feel in the air around her. After a while, the girl stirred. Her golden eyes opened slowly, blinking against the warmth of the firelight. Where am I?" she whispered, her voice weak, trembling. Jonas pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "You're safe," he said gently. "My cabin. Don't worry. You got caught in one of my traps, but I didn't mean to hurt you." She blinked, fear in her eyes. You're human?" "Last of my kind," Jonas said, shrugging. "Name's Jonas Hale. You?" "Serenia," she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean to—" She stopped, struggling to find the words. Jonas gave her a small, understanding smile. "Doesn't matter. No harm done. You're alive. That's what counts." She looked at him, curious, a flicker of trust in her golden eyes. "Alive, yes. But they'll come. My father's soldiers. They'll kill anyone who helps me." Her voice quivered, though she tried to stand tall. Jonas's expression hardened. He had fought hunters and beasts in war before, but this was different. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you," he said simply. "You're staying here for now. Safe. Warm. Nothing more." Serenia's eyes softened, and for the first time since she had escaped, she felt a strange calm. Why help me?" she asked quietly. Jonas looked into the fire. "Someone helped me a long time ago. Never got to repay that kindness. Maybe this is my chance." The girl studied him. There was a sincerity in his voice, a quiet strength that felt unbreakable. You are different from the others," she said softly. "Everyone else, they fear humans. Or they hate them." Jonas chuckled, a low, tired sound. "Fear makes sense. Hate, that's for weak hearts. I don't have either for you." Serenia felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. The fear of soldiers, the cold of the forest, the loneliness of being a princess in hiding, all of it began to melt for a moment. Here was someone who saw her as a person, not a prize or a pawn. Thank you," she whispered. Jonas waved it away. "Don't need thanks. Just survive. That's enough for me." Outside, the wind howled through the red forest. Leaves scraped against the cabin walls like claws. Jonas glanced toward the window, alert. Danger was never far from this world, and he knew instinctively that it would find them soon. He looked back at Serenia. "You're strong," he said. "Stronger than you think. But strength alone won't save you. We'll need brains, patience, and a bit of luck," she nodded slowly. "I'll do whatever it takes." Jonas smiled faintly, seeing the fire of determination in her eyes. "Good, you'll need it. Out there, it's not just the forest you have to worry about. People, powerful people, they'll come for you. And they won't stop until they find you." A long silence fell. The crackling fire was the only sound, wrapping them both in a fragile bubble of safety. Jonas reached over and handed her a small cup of water. She took it, her hands trembling slightly. "Drink slowly," he said. "Strength isn't just in your muscles. It's in your mind, your heart, your courage." Serenia sipped, feeling warmth spread through her body. For the first time since escaping the palace, she felt hope. Jonas watched her quietly, thinking of the years he had spent alone in the forest. He had survived because he knew the ways of the land, because he had patience, because he refused to give up. And now somehow he realized that survival was no longer just about him. It was about this girl. And though neither of them knew it yet, the bond they were forming, the trust, the unspoken respect would be the only thing strong enough to defy an empire. Outside, the red forest continued to whisper, carrying with it the promise of danger and the beginning of something extraordinary. The sun was fading behind the red mountains, and a cold wind began to creep into the forest. The trees swayed, their strange crystal-like leaves scraping together like claws. Jonas sat near the fire, polishing his rifle with slow, careful movements. Every sense in his body was alert. He had lived long enough to know that danger often came quietly. Serenia sat across from him, wrapped in a thick blanket. She had eaten a little, but her body still trembled from hunger, fear, and exhaustion. The young princess looked small, fragile, yet there was a fire in her golden eyes that Jonas could not ignore. "You must be tired," he said softly, not wanting to alarm her. "I know it's been a long journey." "I am," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I ran, and they almost caught me. My father's soldiers, they're everywhere." Jonas frowned. "Your father? You mean the Emperor?" She nodded, her lips trembling. "Yes, the Emperor of the Valari Empire. No one ever escapes his reach. No one, except—" She hesitated, unsure if she could say more. Jonas looked at her gently. "Except what?" "Except you," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "I don't understand why a human would risk himself for me." Jonas leaned back, his weathered face shadowed in the firelight. "I've learned over the years that life isn't about who's powerful or who rules. It's about what's right, and you're just a child who needed help." Her eyes softened, glistening with a mixture of relief and awe. "I thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to," Jonas said simply. "Just survive. That's all I ask." A distant rumble echoed through the forest. Jonas froze, listening. It wasn't thunder. The sound was too precise, too deliberate. Something moved through the trees, something mechanical. "Jonas?" Serenia asked, her voice small. He motioned for her to stay quiet, creeping to the window. In the fading light, he saw it. Searchers moving in the distance. Sleek silver armor, glowing visors, and weapons humming with deadly energy. His heart tightened. The Emperor's soldiers were close. "They're here," he muttered under his breath. "They're looking for you." Serenia's hands clutched her blanket. "Please, we can't let them find me." "If they do, they'll kill you too." Jonas nodded. "I know, we'll make sure they don't." He crouched, pulling her closer. "Listen carefully. There's a path through the woods that leads to the cliffs. You follow that path and you'll find a waterfall. Hide there. Don't make a sound. Promise me you'll do exactly as I say." She swallowed hard. "I promise." Jonas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small charm, a worn piece of metal etched with the old symbol of Earth. "Take this," he said, pressing it into her hand. "It's a reminder that humans don't give up, no matter what." Serenia held it tightly, her fingers curling around the cold metal. "I will remember," she said. The wind outside picked up, rattling the cabin walls. Jonas stood, adjusting his rifle. "I'll draw them away. Stay hidden. Survive. That's all I need from you." "But," she began. "No buts," he interrupted gently. "Trust me. It's the only way." The first of the soldiers appeared at the edge of the forest, scanning the shadows. Jonas stepped into the open, letting them see him. He raised his hand slowly, then lowered his rifle, making himself look unthreatening, but ready. The leader barked in a harsh, alien language. Jonas's mind worked quickly. He had spent decades reading the forest, knowing every root, every shadow. He led the soldiers on a chase, weaving through the trees, drawing them deeper into his traps. Nets hidden beneath leaves, pitfalls covered by moss, and sharp snares waited for those who pursued him blindly. Meanwhile, Serenia crouched behind a rock near the cabin, clutching the earth charm. Her heart pounded in her chest, every muscle tense. She could hear the shouts, the thuds, and the occasional crash as Jonas's traps claimed another soldier. "He's protecting me," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "A human. He's protecting me." For the first time since escaping her father's palace, she felt a strange kind of safety. A human heart, brave and stubborn, standing between her and death. And Jonas? He moved like a ghost in the forest, a living legend in his own right. Every step was careful, every action deliberate. He wasn't just surviving. He was fighting to ensure that the young girl would survive, too. Somewhere in the red forest, under the shadow of the coming night, the bond between the last human and the Emperor's daughter began to take root. Stronger than fear, stronger than power, stronger than the galaxy itself. The forest had grown darker, the red light of dusk fading into a shadowy violet. Jonas moved carefully through the trees, his eyes scanning every branch, every shadow. The Emperor's soldiers were close, their armor glinting in the last rays of sunlight. Their footsteps crushed leaves, sharp and unyielding, echoing through the forest like a warning. Serenia crouched behind a moss-covered rock near the waterfall path Jonas had shown her. Her small hands clutched the earth charm tightly. Every sound made her jump. The rustle of leaves, a snapping twig, even the faint sound of her own breath. She had never been this far from the palace, never this exposed. Fear pressed down on her chest, but she remembered Jonas's words. Survive. That's all I need from you. Jonas crouched behind a tree, peering at the approaching patrol. He could see them clearly now. Sleek silver suits, glowing visors, weapons humming with energy, ready to strike. They were searching for a princess, trained to kill anything in their way. But they were not prepared for a human who had lived in these forests his entire life. He whispered to himself, "Time to show them what humans can do." Jonas moved like a shadow, silently leading the soldiers into the traps he had prepared long ago. Not for humans, but for the predators that roamed the forest. A net springing up here, a pitfall covered with moss there, even small explosive snares hidden among the roots. Each trap slowed them down, causing confusion and panic among the soldiers. "Human," one of them shouted, their voice harsh and mechanical. "Do not resist." Jonas smiled faintly. "I'm not resisting. I'm surviving." Another soldier stumbled into a pit, shouting in frustration. Jonas used the moment to sprint further into the forest, luring the others deeper and deeper away from the waterfall and Serenia. He knew every path, every hidden route, every shadow where he could vanish. It was a dangerous game, but Jonas had lived for danger all his life. Meanwhile, Serenia sat motionless, her heart pounding. She could hear the sounds of the soldiers being trapped, metal clanging, shouts, the faint hum of energy weapons malfunctioning. She dared not look, fearing that if she moved they would spot her, and yet every sound reassured her. Jonas was protecting her. "You're amazing," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. "A human. He's amazing." Back in the forest, Jonas paused for a moment, catching his breath. He wiped sweat and dirt from his forehead, listening carefully. The patrol was confused, scattered. One by one, his traps worked perfectly. The soldiers were disciplined, but they were not prepared for someone who understood the land better than they could understand technology. He thought of the years he had spent alone in the forest, the long nights, the cold winters, the lessons learned from watching every creature, every predator. All of it had prepared him for this moment. And now the knowledge of survival was not just for him, it was for the girl he had saved. Jonas crept forward, making sure the soldiers were following the path he wanted. They were like pieces on a board, moving exactly where he needed them to go. And somewhere along the winding forest trails, Serenia's golden eyes shone faintly in the dark, hidden behind a rock, holding her charm like a talisman of hope. "She's safe," he murmured quietly. "That's what matters." The storm outside began to rise, a wind that tore through the forest, rattling leaves and bending trees. Rain began to fall, heavy and cold. The soldiers struggled to keep their footing, while Jonas moved with the ease of someone who had lived his whole life in these woods. Every step was careful, deliberate, purposeful. By the time the night fully settled, Jonas had led the soldiers far from the waterfall, far from Serenia. Exhausted but unbroken, he paused, listening to the wind, the rain, the distant shouts of the frustrated soldiers. And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Not for himself, not for glory, but for the girl, the princess, who had wandered into his life like a spark in the dark. He knew their journey was far from over. The soldiers would regroup. The Emperor would not stop until she was found. But for tonight she was safe. Serenia, hidden behind her rock, dared to breathe again. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered softly, "Thank you. Thank you, Jonas." And somewhere in the red forests of Alaris Prime, the last human hunter smiled, knowing that for one night at least, he had beaten the impossible. The bond between them, unspoken but strong, had begun, a bond that would soon change not only their lives but the fate of the galaxy itself. The night had grown thick and heavy, wrapping the red forest in shadows. Rain pounded the leaves and drummed on the cabin roof. Jonas crouched behind a fallen tree, his rifle ready, every sense alert. The Emperor's soldiers were regrouping, frustrated by the traps he had set. Their glowing visors swept the darkness, searching, calculating. But Jonas was already a step ahead. He whispered to himself, "Time to finish this dance." Jonas moved silently, placing himself between the soldiers and the path to the waterfall where Serenia hid. He set small explosive charges along the narrow forest path, ones he had prepared months ago, not to kill indiscriminately but to slow, confuse, and terrify. He worked quickly, efficiently, like a man half his age, every motion precise. Meanwhile, Serenia crouched behind a rock near the waterfall, shivering in the rain. Her golden eyes flicked between the path and the shadowy trees where she had last seen Jonas. Every time she heard a shout or a thud, her heart jumped. But she trusted him. Somehow, the old human hunter had become her shield, her guardian, her hope. Back in the forest, Jonas drew closer to the soldiers. One of them shouted, scanning the shadows. Jonas took a deep breath and fired a warning shot, not at them but at a tree nearby. The sound cracked through the storm like lightning. The soldiers jumped, startled, their formation broken. Jonas used the chaos, moving silently between the trees, planting traps that snapped, rattled, and sent sparks into the stormy night. "Human, stop resisting," one commander shouted, his voice metallic and harsh. Jonas smiled faintly. "Resisting? No. Surviving. That's all I'm doing." Another soldier stumbled into a pit Jonas had cleverly hidden with moss and rain-soaked leaves. The pit collapsed under their weight, sending them crashing with a shout. Jonas didn't hesitate. He took cover, watching carefully, planning his next move. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. The storm battered the forest, lightning flashing across the red-tinted trees. Jonas was soaked, muddy, tired, but he kept going. Every trap worked perfectly. Nets sprang, snares tightened, and soldiers fell one by one, frustrated and confused. Somewhere far down the forest, Serenia quietly moved along the path Jonas had shown her. She clutched the earth charm, her small hands trembling. She was scared, but she moved with care, every step guided by the lessons he had taught her. Patience, observation, caution. She remembered his words, "Survive. That's all I need from you." Back in the chaos, Jonas heard the distant sound of engines, reinforcements. He knew he couldn't fight them all, but he didn't falter. He was human, and humans survived by thinking, by adapting, by being relentless. He created illusions, misdirecting the soldiers, drawing them into dead ends, making them trip over the forest itself. A soldier lunged at him from the shadows. Jonas ducked, grabbing a branch and swinging it with precision. The soldier fell into one of his own traps, caught and disarmed. Jonas didn't gloat. He simply moved on. By the time the night reached its peak, Jonas had done what he came to do. The soldiers were scattered, confused, and exhausted. And in the distance, behind a curtain of rain and mist, he saw her, the princess safe, hidden near the waterfall. She had followed his instructions perfectly. Jonas allowed himself a small smile. "Good girl," he whispered. "You did exactly what I told you. That's how you survive." Serenia looked back at him, their eyes meeting across the stormy forest. She wanted to run to him, to thank him, to hold him, but she knew she couldn't. Not yet. The Emperor's soldiers might still be out there waiting, hunting. Jonas's heart ached, not with fear, but with pride. He had spent decades alone in the forest, surviving because he had to. But now, for the first time, he fought for someone else, for the girl who had wandered into his life, who had trusted him without question. She was the reason he kept moving, kept planning, kept surviving. The storm began to ease, the rain slowing to a gentle drizzle. The forest, battered and wild, seemed to hold its breath. Jonas took a deep breath himself, feeling the ache in his muscles and bones. He was tired, yes, but he had done what mattered most. She was alive. She was safe. Somewhere in the shadows, the scattered soldiers regrouped, muttering orders. But Jonas knew they were no longer a threat tonight, not while he remained in the forest, patient, careful, relentless. And somewhere near the waterfall, Serenia whispered softly, tears running down her silver-blue cheeks. "Thank you. Thank you, Jonas." The old human hunter smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the first light of dawn breaking over the red mountains. The fight was far from over. The Emperor would not forget. The soldiers would return. But for now, one small victory had been won. Jonas Hale, the last human of Alaris Prime, had stood against impossible odds, and for one night, he had been unstoppable. Days passed since the stormy night, and Jonas had led Serenia safely through the forest to the hidden cliffs. The waterfall's mist created a veil of protection, shielding her from the eyes of the Valari Empire's soldiers. She had learned from Jonas how to move silently, how to hide in plain sight, and how to trust her instincts. But safety was only temporary. Word of the princess's disappearance had reached the emperor himself. Soldiers scoured the forests, and scouts reported sightings of a human leading a young girl through the trees. The moment had come when the forest's shadow could no longer hide them. Jonas and Serenia made their way toward the nearest outpost, not to fight, but to confront the inevitable. Jonas had no illusions. He was an old man and he was human. Against the full might of the Valari Empire, survival would require more than skill. It would require courage that came from the heart. When they arrived, soldiers surrounded them. Jonas raised his hands, showing no resistance. Serenia stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing with determination. "Stop," she commanded, her voice carrying over the hushed forest. "This human saved me. He did not harm me. He protected me." The commander hesitated, unsure how to respond. Jonas said nothing, only stood tall, every scar and wrinkle telling a story of battles fought and victories earned. He had faced beasts, bandits, and storms, but nothing compared to the tension in the air now. Soon, they were escorted to the capital, the palace of the emperor himself. The corridors were vast, golden light reflecting off polished floors. Jonas walked slowly, quietly observing the grandeur and power that had once seemed unimaginable. And yet he was not afraid. He had faced fear before, and fear had never won. In the grand throne room, Jonas knelt as protocol demanded before the emperor. The Valari monarch sat tall, his eyes sharp, golden and calculating. The courtiers whispered among themselves, astonished that a mere human had brought the emperor's daughter to safety. The emperor's voice rang out deep and commanding. "This human attacked my soldiers." He interfered with imperial duty. "Explain yourself, creature." Jonas looked up, steady and calm. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice firm, "I did not attack. I survived, and I protected the girl because she was in danger. That is all," the court murmured. No human had ever spoken to the emperor like this, calm, honest, fearless. Jonas did not plead. He did not beg. He simply told the truth. Serenia stepped forward, tears streaming down her silver-blue cheeks.
"Father,"
she cried.
"This man saved me!"
"He kept me alive when your soldiers were hunting me. He risked everything because he is good." The emperor's eyes narrowed, his gaze shifting between Jonas and his daughter. "Good," he repeated, his voice low and measured. "Humans are few and weak. How can one human defy the might of my empire and protect a princess?" Jonas did not flinch. "Because it's not about strength," he said quietly. "It's about what's right. That's something even the strongest warriors can forget." Serenia held up the earth charm Jonas had given her. "He carries this," she said, showing it to her father. "It's a symbol of his kind. Humans may be few, but their hearts are large. He saved me when no one else could." The emperor leaned back, silent, considering. The room was tense. No one dared breathe. Finally, the emperor spoke, his voice softer, almost thoughtful. "Perhaps the stories of humans are true. They are stubborn, clever, and honorable." Jonas remained kneeling, his heart steady, but he could feel the weight of the moment. He had no titles, no armies, no power, only honesty, courage, and his experience. And that was enough to sway an emperor. Serenia stepped closer to her father. "If you punish him, you punish the one being who truly honored life. If you kill him, it is not me who loses. It is your empire that fails to see the value of courage." The emperor's eyes softened as he looked at Jonas, then at his daughter. For the first time he seemed to hesitate, to see beyond the hierarchy, beyond the uniforms, beyond the power he had always wielded. Finally he spoke. "This human will not be harmed. Let him go, for he has proven his worth." Jonas exhaled, a long, quiet breath, relief washing over him. Serenia smiled, clutching his hand briefly, her golden eyes full of gratitude and trust. For the first time in decades, Jonas felt a warmth he had thought lost forever. It was not power, not revenge, not wealth that mattered. It was courage, loyalty, and the human heart that could stand against impossible odds. And somewhere deep in the throne room, the emperor understood something he had never learned before, that true strength was not always measured in armies or weapons, but in honor, sacrifice, and the simple act of protecting another. The throne room was quiet now, the tension of the past hours settling like dust. Jonas stood outside the emperor's chamber, breathing deeply. The weight of the galaxy, the decisions of an empire had rested on his shoulders, and he had survived. But more than survival, he had witnessed something far more important, the triumph of courage, honesty, and human heart. Serenia approached him, her golden eyes shining. You saved me, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Not just from the forest, but from fear, from helplessness. You gave me hope when there was none left. Jonas smiled faintly, the lines of his face deepening. No one gives hope, we just try to protect what matters. You mattered, Serenia. She reached out and pressed the small earth charm into his hand. Take this, she said. Not as a gift, but as a reminder. A reminder that humans are rare, yes, but they are powerful in ways no one can measure. Strength is more than weapons or armies. It is heart and courage and honor. You have all of that. Jonas looked down at the charm, tracing the faded lines with his thumb. Memories of Earth, of the humans who had come before him, of the lives lost and the lessons learned flooded back. For decades he had wandered alone, forgotten by the universe. But now, for the first time, he felt remembered. The Emperor emerged from his chamber, flanked by guards. His gaze was steady, but there was a new softness in his eyes. Jonas, hail, he said, his voice echoing through the hall. You have acted with a courage and honor that even my soldiers could not match. The galaxy will remember this day, for it is not always power that defines a ruler's fate, but the courage of the small, the brave, and the honorable. Jonas bowed as the rules of etiquette demanded, but his heart swelled with a quiet pride. He had no desire for power or titles. He wanted only what he had always wanted, survival, honesty, and now, the satisfaction of having made a difference. Serenia stepped closer to her father, holding his hand for a brief moment. He is human, father, she said, but do not mistake him for weak. Humans are rare, yes, but some can teach even emperors what honor truly means. He has saved more than me. He has reminded us all what courage is. The Emperor studied Jonas once more, then nodded. You are free to go, he said finally. And if ever you need aid, the Empire will remember your deeds. You are no longer just a human wandering a forgotten world. You are an example of what our galaxy should never forget. Jonas nodded quietly, acknowledging the honor but feeling no pride. It was enough that she lived. It was enough that courage had been seen and remembered. Outside the palace, the first rays of dawn broke over the red forests of Alaris Prime. Jonas walked slowly, feeling the mist and the fresh morning air on his face. Serenia followed him a short distance, silent but present. Words were unnecessary. Their bond, formed through fear, survival, and mutual respect, spoke louder than anything could. At the edge of the forest, Jonas stopped. This is where I stay, he said softly. The forest is my home, my life. You must continue yours. Lead wisely. Remember what you learned. Serenia knelt and placed her hand over his. I will never forget, she said. Not you, not this. The galaxy will know humans are more than survivors. They are legends in their own right. Jonas chuckled faintly. Legends, huh? I'll take that. Just don't forget one thing, the heart is what matters most. Not strength, not numbers, not power. The heart. Serenia rose, tears glistening in her eyes. I won't forget, Jonas, I promise. And as she walked toward her empire, toward her destiny, Jonas turned back into the forest, the red trees and mist wrapping around him like an old friend. The last human on Alaris Prime disappeared into the wilderness, but his story, his courage, and his heart would echo through the galaxy forever. From that day on, in distant stars and across countless worlds, whispers spread of the human who had caught an emperor's daughter in a trap, not to harm her but to protect her. Tales of bravery, patience, and honor grew into legend, a reminder that even the smallest, loneliest, and most forgotten beings could change the course of the galaxy. And somewhere deep in the red forests, Jonas Hale smiled to himself, the wind carrying the promise of survival, hope, and the enduring legacy of a human heart.